Okay, so Ganyu. Let's talk about this character and how I just know people are gonna overrate her here. It's inevitable. People really like when it comes to Ayaka and Ganyu, people really don't want them to be considered bad. And they are. They simply just are. Now Ganyu, she doesn't have the issue of like, oh hey, all my, bursts just missed, but her damage is severely lower. Yeah, let's just go ahead. I'll show off the team. This is my current build on Ganyu. It's not great, mainly because I'm using Wanderer's Troop, which is not for Freeze, it's for Melt, right? You would be using Blizzard Strayer if you were using Freeze Ganyu, but my Wanderer's Troop set is most likely better than my Freeze set. It's a little weird. But even if you want to look at my Ganyu here and be like, oh, that's an awful build, look at this 169 crit damage and add 60% to it because I have C2 shielding. There you go, buddy. Now shut up and stop talking. So one thing I haven't mentioned throughout all of my testing is that, yeah, I completely forgot. We basically will be having a load of crit rate buffs when we use Freeze because, one, Blizzard Strayer, and two, also, we have the Cryo Resonance, which gives us an extra, damage boost there, which is pretty swaggy, honestly. So 50,000 and 80,000, all right, and then 30,000 and then whatever thousand, I don't know, and then 33,000 and then 61,000, and then, yeah, okay, yeah. Now, I wasn't perfect there. I don't use Ganyu a lot, so my timings definitely weren't perfect. I definitely lost some of the buffs a little early. I should have been able to fire 4 shots fully buffed, I'm pretty sure, but I mean, that's just how things go. There's not really, but like even still, we did like what, 130 on our first shot. That's not like fantastic at all. Keep in mind, we're talking about a 70% crit rate, get 20% for the second shot, right? That's 90%, then 15 for being affected by Cryo. It really starts to add up. We already basically were guaranteed there. We had 220 crit damage. Being honest, I really do feel like it's tough to build Ganyu correctly because it only counts for her second shot, this one. So you have to fire it and then you get the 20% crit rate. So it's like, if that first one misses, you miss like 1/4 of your damage almost, is basically how I feel when we, build off of this. So it's like, yeah, sure. And I mean, if you had 80% crit rate, that'd be pretty, good. You also do have to have the extra 15%. We did have the 15%, but I'm gonna be honest, this is not my first time recording this video. I've missed a lot of crits already. And, I should have an extra 15% here, which gets us up to what, 85? It gets us up to 85% crit. And I've lost a lot of crits. I don't know whether that's because I apply so much Hydro that the Cryo doesn't apply and therefore we don't get the effect. It's very plausible that's what happens, and therefore, is it really worth building around Cryo Resonance? I don't know. You tell me in the comments. So, yeah. Not the greatest. She could also be level 90, which would increase her. That's not how you see base stats. Which would increase her base attack by a little bit, right? It would increase her base attack by 40, which isn't, nothing, right? That's not, like, nothing. 40 extra base attack is, an extra... It's 4.3% extra, like, base attack, basically, which should equate to 4.3 extra, like, damage overall. But that's all we were really missing. This character doesn't age well. Like, you guys gotta just accept that these, like, 1.0 and 2.0 characters did not age well after, Sumeru. This team is not good. Just flat out, it's not. There is, like, it's just the gap between this character and literally any Natlan character. I will take Chaska 500 times over this character, by far, especially her Freeze variant. There is a Melt variant, which I used to play very, very much so often, which is why I have 136 Elemental Mastery, because this is a little bit of a hybrid, because normally what I have is this, and this is like, oh wow, 37 Elemental Mastery and stuff. Actually, the Elemental Mastery isn't that high because Wanderer's Troop already gives you 80. I've got 56 actual Elemental Mastery, which could easily just be, oh, I rolled Elemental Mastery 3 times, which is what happened, obviously. But that's basically all that is. So, yeah, Ganyu, guys, Ayaka, Ganyu, they did not age well. It's okay to say that. You don't have to defend these characters. I get, you know, oh, do I have the best builds for these characters? No, especially not Freeze Ganyu, right? Freeze Ganyu, there's not even, like, you don't use Wanderer's Troop on Freeze Ganyu from what I can understand, right? If I go to the Akasha real quick and I'm like, oh, give me, you know, Morgana, right? Every single one is using Blizzard Strayer. Every single one. There is not a Wanderer's Troop version at the top. It is all just Blizzard Strayer Ganyu, which, you know, it makes sense. And it is also on Morgana, which, I mean, isn't really that great of a team. Like, guys, we gotta understand. I could put her on a quick MH set. Like, if I wanted to, I could try and put her on a quick MH set. But it's not worth going through and sifting through all my artifacts just to find out, oh, she's still bad, you know? Like, there's no amount of, like, oh, I'm gonna invest more into my artifacts. There's no amount that's gonna make me consider this character good. It's not gonna happen. It simply isn't gonna happen. So yeah, that's one thing. So it's something that I want to talk about, because it's the sort of same thing with Ayaka. Because my Ayaka build, listen, understandably, I do not have a good Ayaka build. It just simply isn't good, right? It's built off of, you know, strong box pieces that are okay, right? They're okay. They have the main stats. You know, sometimes they really don't have a lot, you know. And I mean, this is good. This not so much. This is okay, you know, got the high crit rate, not necessarily, you know, needed, but, you know, we also have cryo damage there, right? And then this has basically nothing, but, you know, it's not imperfect because, well, what we have to balance that out is C2 Shieldin giving us 60% crit damage. Simple as that, right? Like, let's be honest. Guys just gotta understand and be like a little more, you know, not, you know, jump the gun immediately for these cryo characters that are, you know, 4 years old. I don't know how old they are, but they are incredibly old and they didn't survive the Dendro meta. They just didn't, right? These characters didn't. And we'll see how Miss Coffee, you know, decides to help them out. But I do think that overall these characters do need help, and I don't think it's going to be in a way of them giving their damage buffed. From what I can understand, it's probably going to be Miss Coffee doing off-field damage and healing and, you know, proccing Fiorina to give her more off-field damage. I would not be surprised if it ends up like, oh, hey, Ganyu's team, turns out Coffee is really doing all the damage in the team. There's a chance that even in this team, Fiorina is doing all the damage in this team. Like, legitimately. It's just going to be like that, and it's good, you know, for a character like Ayaka, who her burst can just miss the opponent. And, you know, we did the Ayaka video. I don't want to, like, make this a sort of Ayaka video, but, you know, people who came to defense of Ayaka saying, oh, you need to do X in order for X to happen, that's not good. It simply is a flaw in the character. I'm sorry to tell you, but we have characters that do not need, you know, to, you know, have their entire kit be based off a burst that stays, you know, going forward, and the enemy can just walk around it. It's called a flaw in the character, and that makes her worse. Because if you accidentally type or press Q a little too early, sorry, completely mistargeted, you lost all your damage. But, you know, that's not the case for Ganyu. And I think Ganyu, we can talk about real quick as a support, because she gives 20% cryo damage. Let's say you're not someone who has Shinha or wants to get Shinha, right? Maybe you hate her in the story. I don't know why you would do that. She's like the best character to find out she's going to be a part of the story. Legitimately, I hate Shinha because I want her to be better. That's legitimately how I feel, because I love this character in the story, but man, using her in game sucks. But, you know, you got Shinha here who's giving you a 15%, you know, normal charge plunge and stuff, right? And 15% cryo damage, which is 30% damage in total. However, and also some res shred, right? Obviously, because you get that, and, you know, probably should, you know, level that up before we get into Miss Coffee, but we'll see if I need to. But yeah, it'll give you a little bit of res shred, and that'll do pretty nice for you. But yeah, what, you know, Ganyu can do is go ahead and she can give you 20% cryo damage bonus. You know, she can do off-field damage, which isn't honestly that, you know, insane, if we're being honest. Like, it's 105% multiplier. What is yours? 141%. I don't know. I know Ganyu is quadratic, right? It is a whole thing, quadratic scaling. It basically means the more enemies on field, the better Ganyu's burst does damage, right? That's basically how that is. Although more enemies on field, not exactly what we're seeing in Natlan. The entirety of Natlan so far, more enemies on field, maybe like 2. Maybe like 2 at once, you know, maybe. So, yeah, I do think, you know, if you have Ganyu, you could definitely get away with using her as, you know, 20% cryo damage. And don't forget, this will act as a taunt, which can actually help out with Ayaka's targeting, right? So they do have some pretty good synergy. If you know, Ayaka, right? You go ahead, you throw down Ganyu's taunt. The enemy will then try and attack the taunt, and you can, you know, Ayaka burst. The enemy won't try and like, oh, dash away or anything, right? He'll just go after the taunt, and there won't be like, oh, you moved your characters 2 centimeters too far to the left. Oh, no, because then, you know, it's the Ganyu taunt, and generally, from what I found, you know, the enemies like to get really close, and they don't try and like do their dashing moves. Like if we were talking about like Magu Kenki, when you use the E skill for Ganyu, you know, you're able to have Magu Genki go up and like attack it properly. From what I remember, Magu Genki hasn't been in the Abyss in a while, but you know, basically any other enemy would act the same. So she does have the tools in her kit to still make her somewhat relevant, even if you're not using her as a DPS. So I think it certainly is plausible that she could end up being on someone's, you know, favorite Ayaka team in a minute, right? Literally in a minute, like 5 days, that's all it's going to take, and she'll be on someone's favorite Ayaka team or something, right? Because I think, you know, it does just help out. So Ganyu pre-Miss Coffee sucks. Same thing with, you know, Risley, same thing with, you know, Ayaka. They all just suck because Freeze does nothing for these cryo characters, and overall, you just can't really rely on them. We'll see how Miss Coffee, you know, changes the way that Freeze is viewed. Probably it's just going to be her doing a lot of off-field damage, and then the DPS is doing like, oh, you know, a little bit of damage. Because I'm being honest, like, Miss Coffee has to be doing a lot of buffing in order for the DPS to actually do something. And all we know about Miss Coffee's buffing is that she does red shred and heals. And the buff comes from Furina when she heals. So it's certainly a choice with all this, you know, happening. Personally, I will not be, you know, saying that Ganyu or anything related to Freeze right now is good. We'll see how good Miss Coffee is, but, you know, we'll see. Because I do think she'll be good. I think she will. I think if they want to make her a good Freeze support, I don't think it's going to be like Emily. The thing with Emily is, they didn't really do her justice, and there wasn't characters that were already built around using Emily. So what ended up happening was, oh, Alhaitham, you know, now has a Burn teammate, but nobody wants to use Alhaitham on Burn because it was never something that wanted to be used in the first place with him. So Ganyu is a character that you kind of wanted to use Freeze with, right? There was a genuine like, oh, let's use Freeze. Oh, hey, let's look at Ayaka. Oh, she uses Freeze because she isn't really able to use Melt. So you're kind of, you know, it's basically like if Emily had like partners when she launched, and like we know Miss Coffee is gonna get another partner with Skirk, so I think it'll be pretty sick. I think genuinely it'll be pretty, you know, cool to see how Miss Coffee, you know, functions with these two in particular. I'm not so concerned about Risley because I just don't really see Risley, you know, as a less than Melt, right? Whereas, you know, Ganyu, even in Melt, she's just not doing enough damage. She's basically doing 100,000 less than my Risley's charge attack, which, to be fair, that's a C2 Shieldon, you know, and all the other stuff. And Melt, she's basically, I mean, I had a top 11% Melt Ganyu, basically. And my Risley's top 1% or something. What is it? My Risley's top 1%, so I you know, it's not enough, though. Like, you guys, Akasha's rankings, I'll be honest, chat, it's heavily based on crit rate. And you know, if I look at a character, I'm not gonna actually factor in their crit rate entirely at all. Like, I'm just gonna look at their damage numbers and be like, oh, that's what they do on a crit. I don't factor in their non-crit damage. I just don't. I really, when I'm looking at a character, I don't. So when I looked at my Ayaka, she did 32,000 damage on her burst tick. I was like, oh, 640,000 damage. Her crit rate mattered none. I think Ganyu and Ayaka will be helped out tremendously. So far, I'm not so hopeful for Risley, sadly, because, you know, I love Risley, but I really don't think that man's gonna get a buff. I really don't, because it's just like Mel is so clearly his best team, and if it doesn't end up being Mel, that's pretty game-breakingly broken. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.